I went to my website. I have a lot of Parsha classes. I probably have 15 Parsha classes in Chayey Sara. All the good psukim are taken already. I did them all. I even did the Bnei Yishmael. A guy sent me a message, Rabbi, you did a class on Bishmael's children. You didn't include the PDF, send me the PDF of all things. The Bnei Yishmael. Bnei Yishmael I have a class on. Bnei Ketura I have a class on. Ketura I have a class on. So I was looking for something. I mean, there's other stuff. They're better. I could have chosen more classic things. But I chose a little detail in the Parsha, which this morning, I was learning Chitas yesterday, I found it compelling, I found it noteworthy. Yesterday I thought about it, today I prepared it a bit. Let's go through the story from the beginning. Sarah dies, right? Sarah passes away. Avraham comes back. What is the first thing Avraham does? He cries. The first thing he does, he cries. He's an oinen, right? His wife just passed away. She's not yet been buried. And the first thing Avraham does, Avraham lispeid l'sara v'levkoisa. Avraham comes home to talk about his wife, his late wife, and to mourn her loss. And the pasuk says, in the middle of the morning, Vayokam Avraham me'apnei meisa. Avraham is you can't say sitting shiva, because sitting shiva is after the levaya. Yeah, this is before the levaya. But the Chabad Kam has anything for the levaya. But in the whole world, in halacha and in shas, there's something called the hesped. When a person passes away, you eulogize the person. The hesped could take hours. It could take days. The eulogy. We talk about the person who passed away. Why don't we do it? Because we're afraid of exaggeration. Whatever you say about the person, they're going to collect from him on the other side. They tell stories about people who came to people in dreams and they said they're giving me a hard time, and they went to some tzaddik. He says, take some words off his matzeva. You described him as a tzaddik and a gadol and a kodesh, and he ain't so. They scraped him off the matzeva. But this is before the burial. Before the burial. Avraham comes home, and the first thing he does is he cries and he eulogizes his wife. And the pasuk says he stops. He gets up in the middle. Now, if anybody loses a relative in Lubavitch, we have what's called the Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha, all they do is charge you an awful lot of money. Dying is extremely expensive. And part of the reason it's expensive is when people die, you don't start penny pinching. You don't go look for bargains. They charge for the mortuary, they charge for the place, they charge, I'm not sharing out. It's like, are you kidding?
It's not voluntary.
The Chevra Kadisha is voluntary, but the Shemer Adas, the place that you use for the Tahara, charges a lot of money. The chapel, they charge good geld. A person loses a relative, they don't have to worry about the burial. They don't have to dig the grave, they don't have to worry about the Arna or the Tachrichim. It's all taken care of. They pay for it, but they don't have to worry about it. But Avraham didn't have Chevra Kadisha. You know, Agudat Hasidic Chabad was on vacation when Sarah passed away. So he couldn't exactly turn to others, so he had to advocate for his wife, and he had to actually buy a plot. Had to buy a place to bury her. This is Derech Agav. When the Frierdiker Rebbe lost his mother, the Frierdiker Rebbe's mother passed away in 1942. The Rebbe took a chassid named Kazanovsky. We have a boy in yeshiva who's an inical of his. And he went with $1,000 that in 1942 was a lot of money. And he put down $1,000 in Montefiore Cemetery, and he bought the plot. The first person buried in the plot in Montefiore was the Frierdiker Rebbe's mother. They had an old chelka someplace else, but I guess it was filling up. There were all kinds of explanations why it was done this way. But he went and he bought the place. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't buy it. So Avraham had to buy a plot. So in middle of his Avelis, right, and again, we can't call it Shiva because it's before the Levaya. It's Aninus, it's the most severe condition of Avelis. Avraham steps away from the Aninus to negotiate a plot for his wife. And of course, as we all know the story, he didn't just buy his plot for his wife, he bought the equivalent of a cemetery, where all the immediate members of the family would be able to be buried. That's what's called the Maras HaMachpelah. But he's buying it officially because of Sarah's death. So I'm reading the psukim inside. He gets up in the middle of his sadness. He says, listen, right now I'm in a very, very depressed state, but there are practical needs that need to be met. We have to bury her. A person passes away, I'm in Jewish law, We bury people as soon as possible. In the world, they try to keep them around as long as possible. By Yidden, you put them in the ground as soon as possible, because until you put them in the ground, it's better for the neshama to bury them as quickly as possible. So he speaks to the people of Chet, the Hittites, and he tells them, I live here. And Rashi, of course, says, I live here as a guest. I live here as a balabos. I can push myself. I can push my weight around. I can act like a regular, like a guest and behave that depends on you. I need a place to marry my wife. I need a place to marry my wife. So the Bnei Ches tell Avraham Avinu. They say to Avraham Avinu, you are a Nasi. We don't see you as a foreigner. We don't even see you as a regular citizen. We see you as a leader. We had in 2 Parshas ago that Avraham was made a king over all the kings. He was very well respected. We see you as a superior amongst us. So you shouldn't even have to ask. Whatever you want, it's yours. Whatever you want, you got. So what does it say in the next pasuk? Who remembers? When they tell Avraham Avinu what they think of him, that he's a man of great prominence, he's a man of leadership, he's certainly not a foreigner. The next pasuk, Avraham stands up. Vayakam Avraham stands up. He bows to all the people. Lebnei Ches, to the people of Ches. So there's 2 expressions. First of all, he doesn't just bow. He stands and he bows. To whom does he bow? 2 things. Am Haaretz, the people who live there, and the Bnei Ches. And then he tells them what he wants. If I am a Nasi, and I can have anything I want, speak to Ephraim about the Haaretz HaMachpelah. And Ephraim says to Avraham Avinu, Avraham, you can have it for free. You are, in other words, he reinforces the status in which Avraham Avinu was held. You're a Nasi, you're an honorable citizen. We consider you higher than the rest of us, even though you're a foreigner. You can have it for free. And it says again, Vayishtachu Avraham לפני, Avraham bows the second time. But the second time, it doesn't say he stands, it just says he bows. It doesn't say that he bows to the Am Haaretz, to the Bnei Ches, he only bows to the Am Haaretz. So twice in our Parsha, Pasuk Zayin and Pasuk Aleph, Avraham is bowing to Goyim. Why is he bowing to Goyim? Because they're showing him honor, and because they're offering him a grave. The first time he bows because they're showing him honor. And it says, Vayakam, he gets up and he bows, and he's bowing to the Am Haaretz and to the Bnei Ches. The second time he bows, he's bowing to the Am Haaretz because they're offering him a grave. And of course, we all know what happens after that. Tzaddik Ephraim says to Avraham Avinu, no big deal, just $10 million for the spot. We're friends, not a big deal. $10 million, what's the big deal? Ephraim, Rashi says, Diber harbe v'afilu matla yasa. He speaks big and doesn't even give a little bit. He wanted to make it sound like such a nice guy. He took international currency for this stupid plot. Because he was a chazan. So I was curious about this. I really was curious about this whole thing of Avraham Avinu bowing. And one of the things that I was thinking about yesterday was we learned in Chumash that Yankov bows to Esav 7 times. And because Yankov bows to Esav 7 times, Mordechai has to not bow to Haman 7 times because it was considered a crime. But Yankov Avinu bows 7 times ad Gishtei ad Echav. Yankov should bow to Esav. So in the Megillah, Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtach, Mordechai refuses to bow. Why did it have to be Mordechai? You all know this. Because Mordechai was from Binyamin. And Binyamin was not born yet. Rachel was pregnant. So Binyamin was not born yet. So Binyamin did not bow to Esav initially, so the children of Binyamin could correct the Aveda of Yankov Avinu bowing unto Esav by not bowing to Haman. As the Megillah says. Who? He was showing deference, he was showing respect. The question is, why over there it's not considered such a good thing? I don't want to talk about Yankov Avinu. I'm giving you a corollary. We have in another case where we have in the Chumash with one of his bows. So I was curious about this bowing. I was curious about the fact that it says he bowed twice. And I was curious about the difference between the circumstances of the bow. So I decided to make this the topic. I mean, I cannot say I found tons of material. I looked through probably 15 svarim, including Midrashim. There's not that much on it, but there's enough to develop a rather interesting lattice work, a picture of this Avraham Avinu's bowing. There's different opinions about the meaning of the bowing and so on and so forth. First of all, the Reb Saadia Gaon says he's bowing as a thank you. Who is he bowing to? He's bowing to everybody. Who is he bowing to? Who is he bowing to? He's bowing to everybody. Now you'll see soon how this all develops. There are three categories of people. Number one, Ephraim, the individual from whom he's actually going to buy the Marzeh Machpelah. Number two, the leaders, the power brokers who live there, who have the real influence. Yeah. And number three, the masses, the entire community. And the Mefarshim discuss different opinions, different times. To who is he bowing? Is he bowing to everybody? Is he bowing to the leaders? Is he bowing to Ephraim? We'll talk all of this through, but most people see that the bowing is a sign of thanks or praise and acknowledgement. That's what the Rasag says. Now, the Sipponer writes that he didn't bow to everybody. In Pasuk Zayin, when it says Vayakam Avraham Vayishtachol Am HaAretz Lebnei Ches, Am HaAretz means everybody. Bnei Ches means the prominent ones. So the whole community is there. The whole community came. They came to honor Avraham. They came to honor Sarah. Everyone's there. When Avraham gets up to bow, it may look like he's bowing to everybody, but in fact he is bowing to the leaders. Bnei Ches means the leaders of Ches, because they had the power. Avraham needed their support. Avraham needed their agreement. So that's whom he's bowing to in Pasuk Zayin. Later on, when he bows the second time, it's different. But in Pasuk Zayin, he's bowing to the leaders. This is what the Sipanu says. Now, the Cheskuni says that he didn't only bow to the leaders, he bowed to everybody. Why? Because the lowly people know how to make noise. He wants the deal to go through. He doesn't want anybody to renege. So although the people he negotiates with are the people who have the power, but he needs to make sure that the community, that the Hamayin, the masses, don't say, excuse me, he didn't give us a piece, he didn't give us covet.
He wants the popular vote as well.
He wants the popular vote. So the Cheskuni disagrees. I'm not doing questions yet. The Cheskuni, I saw Yan, the Cheskuni disagrees with the Siponu. He's a Yaakov Avizachal Am HaAretz to everybody. He really needs to bow to the leaders because he needs their support. But he knows and understands that if he's only going to have the leaders and he's not going to have the masses, he'll have problems either today or later. So he says thank you to everybody, not only to the leaders. Okay? Because if you want to make a cemetery, any place in the world, you need permission of the whole city. Because you make a cemetery, the one problem with a cemetery is it doesn't go away. Because no one's coming back to life until Chayey Sara Avraham occurs. You put aside a land for a burial plot, it's going to be a burial plot that's safe, kol hadedus. So you need the permission of the entire community, and therefore he has to bow to everybody. So one Mefarish says he's bowing to the leaders because they have the power. And the other Mefarish says he's bowing to everybody, to be putting it very, very straight, because he doesn't want no trouble. The Alshich says the same thing. He just adds a kvetch. He talks you through Avraham Avinu's thought process. Avraham thinks to himself, I need to acknowledge the leaders. I need to acknowledge the power brokers. They're the people with the authority to make a cemetery. They're the people with the power to have me purchase a plot. I need to thank the leaders. But it's a good idea to just include everybody. In other words, the Alshich explains Avraham Avinu's thought process that although he really needs to thank what's called Bnei Ches, he understands that it's good politics, if you don't mind using that word, to not just thank the Bnei Ches, but to thank everybody. That's the Am HaAretz Lebnei Ches. Everybody, even though he really means the Bnei Ches. Okay? Now, the Radak, Reb David Kimchi, adds another kvetch, that he stands up. Avraham stands up. Why does Avraham stand? Avraham stands as a sign of respect. Now you have to remember, the first time Avraham Avinu bows, they haven't offered him anything. They've just basically told him, Avraham Avinu, we like you, whatever you want you can have. It's an open check, right? They haven't told him, you can have this. They've simply said, you are important to us, we like you, we're happy that you live amongst us, whatever you want you can have. So Avraham stands, and he bows, and he says he bends his head, And the bending of his head is derech haidah, is a sign of submission and acknowledgement. And he's praising them for the offer. He's not praising them for what they've given him because they haven't really given him anything. He's praising them for the fact that they told him that whatever he wants, he can have. That's what the Radak adds. Okay? But everything we just discussed is the first time. In Pasuk Zayin, right, what's the story? Avraham comes to Hebron to cry and to mourn and to eulogize his wife, right? And people gather, and there's a levaya. Son is not yet buried. Everybody comes, Avraham cries, and the whole deal. And the first time he's bowing to everybody. So the first time Avraham bows, Avraham's bowing to everybody. Then the people tell him, you can have whatever you want. So Avraham says, okay, I want this. I want to have Ephraim's property. I want to have the Marsah Machpelah and the field that goes with it. And Ephraim gets up and says, it's on the house. You can have it for free. The Avraham bows the second time. The second time he bows, he doesn't stand. He just bows. And it says in one of the Mefarshim, I don't know why I didn't say it yet, that the second time he doesn't stand up, you know why? Because he's not bowing to everybody, he's bowing only to Ephraim. And in order to bow only to Ephraim, he doesn't have to stand. Because when he's bowing to everybody, he has to stand, because he wants even the people behind him to feel like he's bowing to them. The second time, Vayishtachu Avraham Lifnei Am Haaretz, most of the Mefarshim has the word Lifnei, in the presence of. The second time he's not bowing to everybody, he's bowing to one man. He's bowing only to Ephraim. He's thanking Ephraim for his generosity, which we'll soon find out just how generous it is. Vayishtachu Avraham Lifnei, in the presence of all the people, he bows to Ephraim. And that's the real difference between the first time he's bowing and the second time he's bowing. The first time he's bowing to everybody. He's thanking them for their honor, and he's also making sure that they're not going to give him trouble later. So he's bowing. Am Haaretz means everybody. Bnei Ches means the leadership. The second time it says Lifnei Am Haaretz, and in front of everybody else, he's bowing to one man. He's bowing only to Ephraim. So it doesn't say he stands up, because he can just lean forward. Ephraim is sitting in front of him.
He's not even fully bowing. Is he fully bowing down?
No, he's bending his head. We don't assume that this is Pisha David. He's bending his head. Yeah. But the second time he's bowing, by the way, there's a story with the Rebbe, which only compounds the ultimate issue of this class. The story is absolutely incredible. It's incredible. I should save it for the end, but I'm not going to save it. The Rebbe used to go visit his mother every single day. 7 days a week, he would go visit his mother. On a regular weekday, it was always at 6 o'clock. But he went Shabbos, he went Yom Tov, he maybe on Yom Kippur, he went maybe Yom Kippur not. He went to see his mother every day. And you should know, Shabbos and Yom Tov, his mother would come to shul. And when she would leave the shul, the Weiber shul was right near the Rebbe's office. She would open the door to the Gan Eden Tachten, and she would stand. The Rebbe would come upstairs, and the Rebbe would see his mother and smile to his mother, and then she would leave. I think that when she would leave on Shabbos and Yom Tov, he would walk her out the front door. There was a woman who walked with her, or a Betel eunuch walked with her, and the Rebbe would stand on the front steps and watch his mother walk all the way to the corner, and then when she would curve around, as long as he could see her, he stood there. When he couldn't see her anymore, he would go back into his room. And there were times that the Rebbetzin would walk, she'd stop and talk to people. The Rebbetzin was extremely friendly. The Rebbetzin Chana was extremely, extremely social. And she saw a new face, she would stop and talk, and the Rebbe would stand and wait until he couldn't see his mother, then go back into his room. He'd go to see his mother every day. He would walk up Kingston Avenue from Eastern Parkway to President. She lived in 1480, the second building from the corner on President in Kingston, on the first floor. And the Rebbe would cross in the middle of the street. I mean, there's crazy stories with cars honking and screeching. The Rebbe didn't look, he just crossed. In the middle of the street, always. Whatever it is. He used to cross, he used to park without looking. And in those days, it's 3 lanes each direction. They would just walk. And the cars would stop and honk, it would walk. A kid said, all the storekeepers knew that Rebbe was passing. And it was a huge, huge covet. And they all came to the front of their stores. Yidden and Goyim, everyone stood at the front of their stores. And that, in those days, it was different than now. It wasn't Lubavitch, it was all Yidden. And they would stand and they would acknowledge each person. One of the stores on that little strip was a hat store. He made hats for the whole Lubavitch. You know, John Kennedy ruined the hat business because he stopped wearing a hat. And after John Kennedy, Americans stopped buying hats, and that guy was angry at the whole world because he ran out of business. Nobody wanted to buy hats. But in those days, people were still buying hats. The Rebbe bought his hats from this guy on Kingston Avenue. And he would stand by the door, the Rebbe would walk by every morning, every day, and tip his hat to him. One day, the Rebbe is passing his store, and he tips his cap to him, as it was his custom. And standing a few feet away was a mailman who was black, African-American man, with a track, with a wheel, with a little cart. And of course, when the Rebbe passed, everybody stood. And the Rebbe saw this man, and he gave him a big smile. The hat store guy was thinking, I get a tip of the cap, and he gets a smile. I make the hat for all of us Hasidim, you know. I should get a smile too. Anyway, the Rebbe went to see his mother. And of course, how much time did he spend with his mother depended on the day. It could be as little as 5 minutes. It could be as much as an hour. Every day was different. And when he came back, they would also wait for the Rebbe. When the Rebbe came back, the guy who sold the hats was standing in the front of his store. The Rebbe walked up to him and said to him, in my entire life, I never bent my head to a goy. Well, do you want to know why I gave you a tip of my cap and I smiled to him? I never bent my head to a goy. Avraham is bending his head to goy twice. First to a whole community, and then to an individual man, he bends his head in deference, in respect, in thanks, in praise, and in acknowledgement, which is fascinating, very interesting. The Chidah adds another thing. The Chidah adds a detail to the second bow. Vayishtachu Avraham לפני הארץ, and in the presence of all the people, Avraham bows to one man. The Chidah says, when you want to thank somebody, you don't thank him in front of other people because you're going to create jealousies. Avraham is bowing to one person. And the Torah says that even though he's bowing only to one person, Avraham is not beneath bowing. In other words, he's showing honor to one man in the presence of everybody. And as most people, when you bow to somebody, you do it privately. You're showing deference. To stand in front of a room full of people, all kinds of people, some of them called Haretz, and some of them called Bnei Ches, and you're bowing to one man, that was an unusual degree of humility on Avraham Avinu's part, to show that kind of deference to all of these people. Now. Everything we said until now is describing the story as it happened, basically, right? What did Avraham Avinu do? And to whom did Avraham Avinu bow? Why the first time does he stand up? Why the second time does he not stand up? Because the first time he's bowing to everybody, the second is bowing to everyone, right? Now we start going into the meaning behind it, and it gets a little bit involved. Number one, the Medrash says that this story demonstrates the incredible humility of Avraham Avinu. Here's a group of people who are calling him a leader. They say to him, you're a Rebbe. They say to him, you're the guy, you're everything. And Avraham responds by bowing. When somebody puts you on a pedestal and you climb off that pedestal, say, no, I'm not special, I'm like everybody else, and I bow to the masses. It was an act of incredible humility on Avraham Avinu's part to so to speak, diminish the honor that they were giving him. And the Erechaim HaKadosh says exactly the same thing, that they were lifting him up, and one of the explanations for Avraham Avinu's bow was Avraham Avinu saying, I appreciate the honor, but I'm one of you. I'm like everybody else. In other words, he's sort of saying, he's undoing the status of Nesiah Lakim that they gave him. And he's saying, no, I'm just a regular guy, and I thank you for the honor, and I'm sort of stepping away from the honor in doing that. Okay, now that's number one. Number two, and this is where the plot thickens. The Even Ezra brings, and you have to understand, Even Ezra is a very unique Meferish. Even Ezra is an extremely unique Meferish. He may be the most unique Meferish. You know why? Even Ezra is universally respected. Universally respected. Universally respected. The Ramban brings him on every shtickle. All the Rishonim bring the Even Ezra. Even Ezra was right after Rashi. Rashi doesn't bring Even Ezra because before Even Ezra. But Even Ezra is brought by the Ramban from the early Rishonim. Even Ezra quotes Kroim. If Even Ezra brings Pirushim from rabbis, from people, that you would burn their books if they had on them. The Even Ezra's open-mindedness is staggering. But there is an understanding that every word of the Even Ezer is Ruach HaKodesh. He's brought in Chassidus. The Even Ezer got away with something that almost no one else got away with. He quotes Mefarshim that were not even Jews. But the Even Ezer brings them, Kedesh Kadosh. And there's so many codes. Even Ezer speaks in riddles. He has like 101 names for people who you never heard of. And you have to know who does he mean when he says Hagon. Hagon means the Rasag, and things like this, including Kroim, including all kinds of characters. He quotes Kroim. When he says Hagon, he means Absadi Gon.
I don't know, but who's
Kroim, they're like the Tztukim. The Kroim were the Tztukim of the Middle Ages. And Even Ezer gets away with it, because Even Ezer is Even Ezer. It's fascinating to notice. Even Ezer is considered Kodesh Kadoshim, even though he's really controversial. But Even Ezer brings that some people say that Avraham was not bowing at all to the Goyim, at all. He wasn't bowing to the Haarets, to the masses. He wasn't bowing to the leaders. He wasn't bowing to Ephraim. He was bowing to the Eibishter. Vayakam Avraham vayishtachu l'Haaretz livnei means he got up, and in the presence of the Haarets, in the presence of the Neches, he bowed to the Eibishter. And the Even Ezer says, nonsense, Baba Maises. Why Baba Maises? Because it says in the Chumash that he bowed to the Haarets. The next time when it says, Vayishtachu lifnei Haaretz, you could say that means the Eibishter. Because the flame means in the presence of. But the first time he bows, he's bowing to them. So the Even Ezer doesn't like that one of these Chavre say that he's bowing to the Eibishter, because b'pashtus he's bowing to the Haarets, to everybody, and to the Bnei Ches, to the leaders, and not to the Eibishter. The problem is that who is the Even Ezer starting up with? The Even Ezer is starting up with the Medrash. The Bereishis Rabbah says, Mikan shemeidim al besura teva. When you get good news, you get up and you bow. Who are you thanking for besura teva? The Eibishter. So Even Ezer is arguing with a Medrash Rabbah. And if you look at the footnotes in the Torah Shleima, he brings the Even Ezer in the footnotes. The Torah Shleima was a Goan Olam. He brings the Even Ezer who doesn't like it, but it's a Medrash. The Medrash says that he Bechlau was not bowing to the Goyim. It looked like he was bowing to the Goyim, maybe it seemed like he was bowing to the Goyim. Perhaps he wanted them to think he's bowing to the Goyim. He wasn't bowing to the Goyim at all. He was bowing to the Eibush. As they state the Medrash. And of course, if you follow the Medrash that he's bowing to the Eibishter, the second time he's for sure bowing to the Eibishter. Because the first time it says, Vayakom Avraham vayishtachu l'am ha'aretz of the Ches, the Pashat the reading is he's bowing to them. And nevertheless the Medrash says he's bowing to them because the Eibishter gave him a B'sura Teva. But the second time it says, Vayishtachu Avraham lifnei ha'aretz, that he bows in the presence of Hamaratzim, that's for sure the Eibishter, because lifnei ha'aretz doesn't mean he's bowing to them, he's bowing in front of them. And if the first time the Medrash holds, he's not bowing to the Goyim, he's bowing to Hashem, the second time for sure he's bowing to the Eibishter, and the Medrash says, Hoida l'shem, sh'nesani aleim l'adon u'si b'teichem, he thanks Hashem for the fact that he had his prominence, and that they gave him what he wanted. Okay? As they state in Medrash. So now comes, so the last two ideas that I just told you are, that the Even Ezer brings from a Medrash, which he argues with, that Avraham is bowing to the Eibishter. Now comes the question, is Avraham right for bowing, or is Avraham wrong for bowing?
According to which way?
If you follow the Medrash, he wasn't bowing to the Goyim, but he was bowing to the Eibishter. Then it looked like he's bowing to the Goyim. You could start going into a whole clan. If you bow to a Goy and you mean the Eibishter, yeah? But the Goy doesn't know you mean the Eibishter, is that a crime? But at least in this Oifen, he's bowing, he's thanking Hashem without thanking the Goyim. But in all the Pashtonim, the Mefarshim, say no, he bowed to the Goyim. And like I started the class, Yankov Avinu bows to Esav, and it's held against him. And Mordechai has to lo yichlev lo yishtachav 1,000 years later, more than 1,000 years later, to undo the fact that Yankov is bowing to Esav. What about here? So there's one more Medrash, that the Medrash says Avraham Avinu bowed to the Goyim twice, and all the nations of the world are going to bow to the Yidden twice. Once in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, and he brings the Pasuk, and once in the times of Mashiach, and he brings the Pasuk. In other words, the Medrash hold that Avraham's bowing even if he was bowing to Goyim, was good. Yankov bows to 2 times is that the Goyim are going to bow to 2 against 2. First in the time of Shlomo HaMelech, and then Mashiach comes. So now we have a problem. How do you reconcile the fact that Yankov bows to Esav and is considered a great crime, and Avraham bows to the Bnei Ches and is considered such a favorable thing that all the Goyim have to bow Yidden in thanks in return for the fact that Avraham Avinu bowed to the Goyim? This is the kasha. This is the kasha. This is the kasha. Now, everything I said until now was source material. I mean, I have a stack of pages. I underlined it. I kept myself notes. I should be able to go in order. Okay? But now comes the creativity. Now comes, when you start making stuff up. Why is Avraham's bowing to Goyim considered a good thing? Even if he's bowing to the Goyim, especially if he's bowing to one man. While Yankov Avinu is bowing, and we know, he doesn't bow to a Goy, like I told you the Rebbe said. In my life, I never bent my head to a Goy. You bend your head to a Goy without meaning it. So what's the difference? What's the difference between Avraham Avinu and Yankov? And I'm sure there's a lot of differences. One of the differences would be that when Yankov bowed to Esav, he was much more powerful than when Avraham bowed to the Bnei Ches. When Avraham bowed to the Bnei Ches, he was one man. He didn't have a lot of power. He was respected, but he didn't have a lot of power. So when you are in a subordinate position, you bow. When Yankov met Esav, he should have had more self-respect, because Yankov at that time had a whole army, he had a lot of people. And he had much success, he had a lot of success. And the emissaries of Avraham also had success. Perhaps, the reason Avraham's bowing is considered a good thing, and Yankov's bowing considered a bad thing, is because by the time Yankov Avinu came along, Jews don't bow anymore, To give you an example, the Alter Rebbe went around debating with the Misnagdim. The Rebbe's later said, I'm not going to debate the Misnagdim. Everybody knows what Chassidus is. I'm not defending myself. In the times of Avraham Avinu, it was necessary for Avraham Avinu to bow. By the time we get to Yankov Avinu, especially since Yankov is not bowing to a Goy, he's bowing to Esav, to his brother. And Esav knows that the birthright of Yankov Avinu's. In other words, if you want to find a difference between Avraham's bowing and Yankov's bowing, perhaps Yankov's bowing was unnecessary. Yankov should have showed more a guy with Esav when Avraham Avinu was not in a position. I'm musing. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Perhaps that's the difference. A second difference is when you bow to a Goy, it has a certain connotation. When you bow to what's called in Halacha Yisrael Mumen, Esav was Jewish. Halachically, Esav was a Jewish. Yishmael is considered a Goy because he's born before the Bris Milah. Esav is considered a Yisrael Mumen. Esav has halacha of a Yid. A Yisrael Mumen, a Jew, who does what Esav does, has to be treated worse than a Goy. Has to be treated like an Ibn Zara. Our argument could be made. Again, all of this is musings. None of this is fixed in stone because I'm making this up. Perhaps because of who Esav was, because Esav was Esav Harash, was a Yid, but it was a Yid who threw all the Jewish values in the garbage. Yankov's bowing to Esav is considered an Aveda. When you're bowing to a Goy, L'chatchila it means so much less. And then, of course, there's the final answer, which is probably the most reasonable answer. Yankov bowed out of fear. Yankov bowed because he was afraid. Avraham wasn't bowing out of fear.
Same thing.
Avraham was bowing out of deference. He was showing respect. There may have been a political component. He wanted to ruffle feathers. He wanted to straighten out the creases. Avraham wasn't afraid. So it's a betachan issue. It's a betachan issue. You live in the world. B'chlal tzaddikim. Tzaddikim have to be normal people. Tzaddikim have to wear clothes. Tzaddikim have to eat food. Tzaddikim have to drive cars. Tzaddikim have to do like everybody else. A Yid who's a makavat alakus also wears shoes. A Yid who's a makavat alakus also eats bread. Now, but then everything he does is at a level of great holiness. But a tzaddik looks like a regular person. He wears the clothing that everybody else wears. Whatever the fashion is at the time, the tzaddik dresses that way. Whatever the diet, whatever the food that people eat, the tzaddikim live amongst the people. Right? It says in the Chumash, it says in Tanakh, right? Tzaddikim, everywhere they live, they assimilated, they integrated into their environment. They didn't want to dafka stand out. So for Avraham Avinu to say thank you to the Bnei Ches by bending his head, it wasn't because he was afraid of them. It wasn't because he felt like the Eibishter is not helping him and he has to take care of himself. The Eibishter brought him to a place where he's called the Elokim. The Eibishter brought him to a place where there was so much respect for him. The Eibishter brought him to a place where Ephraim was willing to give away for free. He's thanking them for it. And the raya is in the words. What's the first thing he says? When Avraham opens his mouth the first time, he says, Geir v'teisha. Says Rashi, if you'll be mentioned, I'll act like a geir. I'll act like I'm a foreigner. I'll pay for everything, and I'll be a nice guy, and I'll be a humble guy. You're going to start messing around. I'll start acting like a toishav, because this is really my lad, like Rashi says earlier in the Chumash. V'aknani v'aprizi oz yesha ba'aretz. Eretz Yisrael was given to Bnei Shem. So what are Bnei Cham doing at Yisrael? Canaan is one of Cham's children. Eretz Yisrael was given to Bnei Shem. What does Canaan do in Yisrael? The answer, they conquered from the Bnei Shem. It was occupation. Occupation. So Avraham Avinu says to them, if you want to be decent, I'll act like as if I'm your subordinate. Anisht, I'm going to get what I need. And I'll do it with all the force that I have to use. So Avraham was showing no fear. If you're not showing any fear and you're bowing, it's considered a banner of honor. Yankov Avinu was afraid. And we all know the Chumash, the Rebbe Sicha, and the Sicha about Moshe being afraid. That Yankov Avinu was afraid. And Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of the Mitzri. Yankov Avinu was afraid of Esav. What are they afraid of? Shema Goram Achet, maybe I didn't Aved, I lost my schusim. So the Rebbe says in the Sicha that the Aved of Yankov and the Aved of Moshe was the fear. And Faket, had Yankov not shown any fear, had Moshe Rabbeinu not shown any fear, there would have been nothing to fear. Esav became a problem because of Yankov's fear. The Mitzri became a problem. That's right, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. The Moshe Rabbeinu had to run away because the Mitzri became a problem because Moshe was afraid. And this is the obvious difference between Moshe, Avraham Avinu's bowing down and Yankov's bowing down. Avraham, before he bows, lets everybody know, I could be a nice guy. But there's another side. I don't think you want to see that. Geir. V'teishav. Now let's talk. So the people got the message. And they cooperate with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu plays the part of a geir. I'm a guest. I'm a visitor. I've invaded your land. Right? Jews are always called Ivri. What does Ivri mean? From the other side of the river. We're always considered foreigners. And he plays that part. And his bowing is coming from that place. Yankov Avinu was afraid. To say what I just said in other words, the difference in Avraham's bowing and Yankov's bowing is not to whom he's bowing, like I said before. It's a betachin question. If you forgot that the Eibush Balbas of the world, that bow is not good. If you remember the Eibush Balbas of the world, and you assert the Eibush Balbas of the world, but you say, we live in the world, and in the world there's a civility, there's an order, there's a normal way to behave, and I will behave that way, then that bow is acceptable. Now, I really feel like there's a lot more to these two bows. The fact that the first time he stands up, the second time he doesn't, the first time he bows to everybody, the second back to Ephraim. But this is what I got so far. Okay, a good Tanakh, people.